Ask Mike, brought to you by the Stadium Shop on Razorback in Fayetteville.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is a Tuesday. We're doing Ask Mike on a Tuesday because of baseball regionals. So not a great happy show. I wish we were talking about super regionals this week, Mike.
Except for track, it's over for this year.
Yeah, but hey, track and field, though.
Injuries messed up football, basketball, baseball.
That's what they're going to remember this season as for the Razorbacks. But let's get into your questions about what happened with baseball. Joel G. Wood says TCU had our number. When you lose 3 games by wide margins, all you can say is that TCU was the better team. It will be interesting to see how the Frogs do going forward.
Yeah, you know, Razorback fans are interesting. Usually they want the team that beats you to win it all, so you can say, like last year, for instance, Ole Miss knocks Arkansas out of the College World Series. This is the team that took the national champions to beat us. And so maybe they feel that way about TCU. Can they win it all? Maybe. There are some teams out there that might match up better against them. Arkansas didn't match up well against them. They just didn't pitch well against them. And there was pitched well for part of the game 2. But they didn't match up against them because you got to score runs to beat TCU. And Arkansas was never a run-scoring team this year. They kind of, it came and went. They had some games where it did. And they had, I've said this before, they had 7 of their 9 guys were capable of big days at the plate. They had power, they could hit for average, but they just didn't all do it consistently. And we saw this team kind of start to go downhill a little bit in the Vanderbilt series, last series of the regular season. Picked it up a little bit in Hoover, but there was some, especially in that second A&M game where they got knocked out in the semifinal, you know, lack of hitting. And I remember saying over and over again, that's the big question going into the regional. Can you pick your hitting back up? Well, they had it in game 1, didn't have it in game 2. Had it a little bit in game 3, didn't have it in game 4 at all. They had 3 hits. You can't beat TCU with 3 hits.
No.
So, again, what is it? Do you want TCU to win it all? I can only give my personal opinion. Normally, I would say, yeah, that's a good thing. I don't like those guys. I didn't like their attitude. I didn't like their fans.
Yeah.
They came into Baum Stadium and they rubbed it in.
They did.
You could come in and cheer and be happy for your team. For instance, other teams that have come in here in regionals, they've been happy, but they didn't do that. I mean, you're up 17 runs. You scored 17 runs in game 1, and Dave Van Horn, everybody knows what he's doing. He's not pitching anybody at that point that he's going to need later on, so they can take advantage. And so they're scoring 18. Now they've got 19. Every time they scored a run, their fans acted like they just won it all. It was just the biggest thing that ever happened, and their players just had snarky attitudes. It reminded me a little bit of Oklahoma State last year. And then their head coach, he just had this smirk on his face. And when they had close-ups, he had this smirky look on his face like, I know we've won it all. We're going to win this thing. So I'm not going to be pulling for them. I hope Indiana State beats them. And I'm never going to be a fan of TCU again just because of this experience here. I thought they came in and rubbed it in.
And I think you're right on that, Mike. I was talking to some fans around Baum, and they said, I don't really like these TCU fans. And I said, you know what? When Alyssa and I went to Arlington the beginning of the season, there was Oklahoma State, Texas, and TCU fans that we got to interact with. And normally, I don't like Texas fans. But I was sitting by a couple of them, and they go, man, TCU fans are the worst. And I didn't understand what they meant at that point. Now I understand what they mean. I mean, if you live in Texas, I think I might have a hatred for TCU fans all the time. So,
yeah.
I mean,
anyway, that's just my opinion. Look, I'm not in any way taking anything away from what they did as a team. They're a really good baseball team, and they got hot at the right time, too. And we'll see if that continues. But there are teams you like. You watch a certain team, and you watch how they play.
Well, like Santa Clara.
Yeah.
I loved Santa
Clara. Teams like that you like, even if they beat your team, you like, and you follow them maybe afterward. This is not one of those teams.
Absolutely not. And you're right on that, Mike. And even Dave Van Horn said it. I don't know if they play like they did against us, I don't think there's a team out there that can beat them, even Wake Forest. So,
Maybe not. We'll see.
We'll see.
They can always cool off. It's all about how you're playing at any given time in baseball.
You're exactly right. Baseball is a weird sport, and we've said that on this show.
Of the major sports, for sure.
It is. Marshall Brent says still proud of them. They had a lot of things to overcome all season and didn't make excuses. They just kept plugging along and had a good season.
Yeah, so what are we going to remember about this team a year from now, 2, 3, 5? What are fans going to remember? I think they'll remember that they won shared a conference championship with the team. As Dave Van Horn said, we had one all-conference player. The other team we shared it with had 5.
I know.
So this team did a lot with less, and especially when you throw in the injuries. So I think what I will remember is the coaching job Dave Van Horn did, because this team could have crashed and burned very easily pretty early in the season. They did some things, quite frankly, that I think people, even though they may acknowledge that I don't think it really hits them how much they overachieved, because when you saw them kind of being what they really were at the end of the season, you realize how at certain parts of this season they really overachieved. Because that team we saw that got killed and gave up 21 base hits and 20 runs, that's the team that we could have seen all year long, a team that just got waxed over and over, a team that might not have even made the conference tournament, might not have been in postseason play. And yet there they were, a number 3 national seed. And so I think I'll always remember this team as a team that overachieved. They didn't have a lot of talent. And so how did they get where they were? I think they must have been very close. That's the only way you can usually do that.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot of talent, if some of your better talent is gone, and those injuries plagued them all the way to the end. I mean, look at what happened at shortstop. You lose your starting shortstop, then you get another shortstop who was the backup, who's playing better than the original shortstop, and then you lose him.
Yeah.
And so we saw an error yesterday because you're having to move your third baseman to shortstop. And Dave Van Horn had to move players around in the outfield all year, different positions. And so it just never stopped. And that's what I will remember, is that a team that could have just completely fallen apart and had every reason to do so somehow got as far as they did.
I mean, you said it right there. It was how close they were. That is what you look to, because Dave Van Horn, I remember going to the first Swatters Club meeting, and he got, he was asked, how do you get all these guys to gel? And he goes, I don't know, but they have. They have gelled, and they've done it so well. It's a unique group of guys, and I just think that truly was the reason they got so far and did all the things that they did. And you're exactly right about that.
This is the first Razorback team where you really see a huge impact of the transfer portal.
Yes.
There's been some impact over the last 2 or 3 years, because this thing is just now kicking in. But this was the first one that you had the same sort of, like the Musselman effect. Where you almost got an entirely new team. And when that happens, it has to gel, and they did. So I think it's a credit to their team captains, their coaches, assistant coaches, head coaches. And so it's a team, to me, if you got any sense and you're not still mad, you gotta give these guys props for where they ended up.
And there's a lot of Razorback fans that are giving them props. I mean, all over social media, I've been seeing people, say really, really nice things about this team, because they know how tough it was the whole season long. And if you have looked at all the adversity that they faced, you can't help but go, man, Dave Van Horn really deserves that SEC Coach of the Year award.
Now for the other side of this.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to get the other side of this. There are some mean comments out there, right, Mike? Philip Osmus says, I hope I got that right, new pitching coach, new batting coach. Maybe it's time to start over. Woo, 22 years of great baseball, SEC championships, SEC tournament champs, Omaha visitors. When are we going to get over the top? Norm DeBryan couldn't win a national championship here, so we end up with DVH. I'm a true Arkansas baseball fan, but just saying. And then Dakota Phillips actually responded to that. We're going to show you what he said. He posts, great season, boys. Now time to talk a lot of the crazies off the ledge who think we should get rid of DVH.
I remember last week when I did this mainly on the radio, but I talked about it a little bit here. When I talked about when the women didn't advance out of the women's softball team didn't advance out of their own regional. And even though you said you saw some snarky comments, I didn't see very many.
There was a few.
And I remember saying at the time that I just felt like that fans of of women's sports on college campuses are a little more rational. Because I said, if Arkansas doesn't get out of their own regional, you're going to see this thing break loose on social media. And you did. I didn't do a percentage breakdown, positive or negative. But this is what you get. And there's all kinds of reasons for it. You can have people that are simply frustrated, heartbroken, mad, and that's what they do. They lash out when they're mad. You can have some that were mad before the game and were just looking for a reason to get mad. They want you to lose so they can then go after somebody because they've got problems in their life. And the social
they just
media.
Want something to be mad over.
What do you do when you go see a psychiatrist? You go in there and tell him all your problems.
Yeah.
Nolan Richardson, people used to say to me, Nolan just seemed like a mean and nasty guy. Is he mad all the time? That's because they only saw him in press conferences. Nolan used press conferences to air his frustrations. As soon as he walked out of those press conferences, he's a nice guy. I used to talk to him all the time. I would interview him. I didn't run stuff from press conferences. He asked me one time, he said, why do you never run my press conference stuff? Why are you always out here interviewing me after it's over? And I said, because you get the mean and nasty Nolan in the press conference. I get the nice, friendly Nolan when it's afterward. I think it helps to air your laundry, your anger, your whatever in public and just let it all hang out. So I'm not going to criticize people for doing that. We have free speech in this country. You can say whatever you want.
You've said that last week too.
You can also look like a dummy, and if it doesn't bother you, that's fine. What I tell people that get upset about this is that there's only one mistake you can make in dealing with somebody that's posting crazy stuff on the internet, and that's to respond to them. If you don't respond to what they say, then they're just out in the woods talking to a tree. But if you get involved in a discussion with them, you're giving them what they want because now they've got your attention and they're never going to shut up once you do that. That's what I do. I get attacked all the time by people that are mad.
Yeah, I've seen it, Mike.
They're doing it again this week. The LSU people were back.
The Tennessee people are back too. They're full force.
And I mean, it's not that I read it, but I have people that love to come up and tell me what people say. Or, have you read your Twitter feed lately? They're saying this. And I would just say, it does not affect me. It's never affected me. I don't care. You can say whatever you want. I am not going to respond to you. I will not give you the. I will not provide the energy in my life to do it because it doesn't matter to me. I don't cover those teams. I don't care about those teams, so it's not an issue. And if that's really the way, if you get upset with what's being posted on social media, if you're a coach, an athlete, or another fan and don't like what those fans are saying, just don't respond. And let it die on the vine, because that's what will happen to it if nobody responds. Yeah,
John Bolton had the best comment of the whole season of like, I deleted Twitter. I didn't want to deal with it. Don't deal with it. He's not engaging.
Exactly.
You know, it was great. Mousetown wants to know, could you name this is a great question. Could you name the yo-yos on the selection committee that decided Auburn should host a regional, but TCU should not? Those guys must have been eating popcorn and streaming old episodes of Friends. I love that question. That's a great question.
I could start with John Cohen. He's Auburn's AD.
We're going to start with Auburn's AD.
He's their AD. He just happens to be the chairman of the selection committee. Gee. Let's try to figure this out. The chairman of the selection committee is the AD at Auburn, not the chancellor. The AD. And Auburn somehow, with a very mediocre year, ends up hosting a regional.
Yeah.
A regional that, by the way, was one of the easiest regionals, even though they were the 14 or 15 seed.
Yeah.
And they went 0-2 in it.
Yep.
So it was pitiful. It's embarrassing.
Terrible.
But I placed the blame on the other guys in the committee because they clearly went along with this, and I don't understand why. And this is not just a rant about Auburn and TCU or whatever. But I will say that TCU is, if you're Arkansas and you're a national 3 seed, TCU is a team you expect to see in Omaha, not in your own regional. That's the way it should work if it's done right. If they seed it, your national 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed, even all 8 of the top 8 national seeds, their regionals should be easier than the ones that from 9 through 16.
But that wasn't the case.
But that's not the case. It's random. This happens every year. And this is what I tell people. This is why baseball is a very strange sport. And I'm not sure I could be a baseball coach because of this. You do all the stuff that you have to do. In the case of, let's just go 2021, Arkansas was #1 in the country.
Yeah.
All year, virtually. I think the first 2 weeks maybe they weren't. From that time on, they were number one. They won the SEC. They won the SEC championship. Got their regional win, but then got a really bad draw in the super regional, one of the hottest teams in the country, and didn't go to Omaha. All based on selection.
Yes.
Okay. Now, same thing this year. And what I would say is that if you know how this works, and these college coaches know, it doesn't matter what you did up until that moment that you see where you are in the NCAA field, because that moment determines your future. It says everything about how far you're going to go. I'm not saying you don't have a role in it you can overcome or whatever, but they can make your life miserable, or they can make it easy. They can grease the wheels for you to go all the way to Omaha, or they can make it really, really tough. And the way it should be is it should be tough if you didn't have a good year and you just barely got in.
Right.
That's where the hurdles should be. It should be easier if you've accomplished all these other things, because otherwise the regular season means zip.
Yeah.
And it should mean something. So because these people don't do it this way, and this happens every single year, and it's random, there's no pattern to it, I think they're not paying attention.
No.
I think they're not doing their homework.
But you're right on that, because did you hear what John Cohen said on the broadcast? They asked him, well, so how familiar with you, or I think the question was something like, how familiar are you with all the teams in the NCAA? And he was like, well, I'm really familiar with the teams in the South, not really familiar with the teams in the North. The Northeast.
Yeah.
What?
You're the chairman of the committee.
But you have to be familiar with all
Yes.
those teams.
Yes.
So he admitted that. He said that. So you're right. I don't think they are doing their homework, is what it boils down to.
To me, this is important enough. Now, this is a radical idea, but I'm going to propose it anyway. Because think about Cohen. He's got a job.
Yeah.
His main job is not the head of the selection committee. He's the AD. He's got work to do all year long. So how much time and effort does he put into this? This is like an extra job this time of year. Okay, you got to go do this now. Okay, well, maybe for a week we'll look at things, and then we'll get in a room and do a few things.
Right.
What if instead of that, because this is important enough, you employed 12 people. You hired them based on their knowledge of baseball. You're a baseball knowledgeable person, and you send them around to watch teams all year in different conferences.
Yes.
You get familiar with conferences and teams. And you have these people because they're in there because they know what's going on.
Right.
And they know they have to be objective. And then you're going to get a true correct draw for the NCAA tournament pairings.
Yeah,
If you
I
did it that
agree.
way, now it would cost some money, but it would be worth it because you're going to eliminate this nonsense that goes on right now. Again, I'm not complaining about Arkansas. They still had a chance they could still have been good enough. They could have beaten TCU. I'm complaining on the behalf of every team that has had this happen to them all throughout the years since this has started. Again, it should mean something if you're seeded one in your regional, but it also should mean something if you're a top 8 seed as opposed to the lower
8 seeds, yeah.
And it doesn't right now.
No,
it's just random.
But and to harp on something you said, Mike, you just said, it's not. I'm not complaining just about Arkansas. Well, look at some of the top 8 seeds that didn't make it. Clemson got knocked out, and you look at Florida. They had a tough path as well. Texas Tech was threatening to win that regional as well. I mean, you go through and look at all the top 8 seeds and see how many advanced and got through. Look at the bottom 8 seeds. There is a clear difference in how they did it. And you're right, it should have been an easier path.
I think if you had people that were familiar with the entire field, had gone around and seen these games, and then they come back and they get together and they do a professional job of constructing this whole bracket.
I agree.
I think you would see it be much, much more logical and much more fair.
I agree with you completely there, Mike. I think they should do that. That just requires money, like you said. T.L. Slayton asked, was this the most disappointing Fayetteville Regional ever? Oh, interesting.
No, it's not.
No, Mike says no.
You have to, because if you put it into perspective with other regionals, you can find some that were worse. And we've got some graphics.
Oh, you're going to find the ones that were worse.
Let's start with 06. Arkansas went immediately into the losers bracket after a one-run loss to Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts.
Oh, God.
What an upset. The Hogs bounced back, with a convincing win over Princeton, but they were eliminated with another one-run loss, that time to Oklahoma State. So 2 one-run losses. That was a pretty good baseball team, and they had 2 games where they got beat by 1 run. That was pretty disappointing
That's
that
sad,
year.
yeah.
But the next year was worse.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
I'll tell you why it was worse. Arkansas was the defending SEC West champions. They started that regional off with a lopsided win over Albany, but then Oklahoma State just jumped all over them and killed them. They had to play Creighton in an elimination game, so they shut them out, came back nicely. But then for the second straight year, the Hogs are knocked out of their own regional by Oklahoma State, and it was another one-run loss. Fans were heartbroken over that. Extremely disappointing. However, that's not the worst.
You can top it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
The
What are we
most
topping
disappointing
it?
Fayetteville Regional ever was the very first one under the Norm DeBryan era, 1999. Arkansas was the outright SEC champion with a 22-8 conference record. Hogs beat Delaware 10-6 in a big upset. Lost to Missouri State, which was Southwest Missouri back then. That was a shocker. They could not recover from that, and they were eliminated by Clemson in the next game. This was a team, and I'm not sure why we don't have those graphics on there. I guess I didn't get them in there.
That's okay.
But this was a team that should have gone to Omaha, and they got knocked out by Southwest Missouri State. That's what really caused it to happen.
That's where that rivalry is, right?
That's now turned into Missouri State, so that's why it's there. But that was the most disappointing one because that team was an outright SEC champion. It was the first one they'd ever had. And everybody thought, we're going to Omaha. And then this team from up the road in Missouri beats you, and all of a sudden you're in the loser's bracket, and you just go,
Now I understand why that game is so heated. Is that where that started?
That's where it started.
Oh my gosh, yeah, those are definitely disappointing. And the one-run losses, that hurts.
2 years of them.
That hurts. I mean, because you're there. You're this close.
There was a period of time when Razorback fans said, we don't want to host a regional. We don't
Really?
Yes. We don't do well in regionals. We do better when we're out on the road because Arkansas would go out on the road and make it to Omaha, going to all these different places and winning these super regionals.
That's what happened last year, remember?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
they have a long history of doing that.
Yeah.
The only advantage I can see to hosting is that it's good for your fans if you win. They get to have a good time, but it can be like this year where you don't really have a good time.
No, you just are sitting there going, please let this game be over with.
I think fans would take last year all over again if you could trade. Yeah, we'll go back over to Stillwater and play and win.
Yeah, go to Chapel Hill.
Might have to drive 2.5 hours over there, but I can go over there and make fun of those Oklahoma State fans and have a good time.
And then Chapel Hill, I mean, those were some sad North Carolina fans, I'll tell you. And there was a lot of Arkansas fans there, too. Yeah. So it was pretty good. But Hog Redneck wants to know, do we have a legitimate shot at landing Grant Nelson? I know this is the biggest question on everybody's mind right now. Adding a big of his quality could give us the best roster since the national championship team. Wow, that is a big...
I had to go to Kevin McPherson.
Of course you did, our Hog Hoops insider.
So I talked to him this morning. He said, well, first of all, he's canceled his visit to Baylor, so that's good news.
Yeah.
The word out there was that he was going to be at Alabama for a day and Arkansas for 2 days, so that would make it look like maybe he was favored in Arkansas.
That's not the case, right?
And Kevin said, yeah, those are semantics. He said he's probably going to show up sometime this afternoon at Alabama and be there all day tomorrow, so it's parts of 2 days.
Yeah.
And he'll come into Arkansas on Thursday and be here through Friday, probably the equal amount of time. Now, there's some chatter on the internet to the effect that if the thing you have to watch out for is him going to Alabama today and tomorrow and then not even coming here, just going ahead and committing there.
Yeah.
If that happens, you're dead in the water, obviously.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't commit and still comes here, then they think they have a better chance.
A chance, yeah.
Now, Arkansas has some things going for it. I mean, he's played here. He's been in a game in Bud Walton this past season, so he's familiar with the atmospheres. And anybody that would, I mean, I don't know if he has familiarized himself with a game at Alabama, but you got an aircraft hangar versus a basketball arena.
I'm sorry. I've never heard
it's
anybody.
Like an aircraft
it
hangar.
is like an
It's a big,
no, you're right, it is, but I've
like
never heard anybody describe it like that.
That's what it's like.
That is great.
It's not. It's one of the worst basketball arenas in the SEC. It's
Terrible.
terrible. It's
Terrible.
Just,
It might be the worst.
I don't know why they don't do something about it, because it needs to upgrade. So maybe that would make a difference. But then there's this. Alabama lost a lot of their front court guys. He would be the stud. He would be the main guy in their front court next year. Here, he's going to be he'd be one of 5, I think. Let me count them. We got Bayfall coming in, a freshman.
Leighton Blocker.
No, I'm talking about the bigs.
Oh, the bigs. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the studs.
So you got Bayfall. You got Trevin Brazil.
Yep.
You got, it's 5. So you got Mikhail Mitchell.
Makai Mitchell. Mikhail's going to
Makai Mitchell.
Makai Mitchell, you're good.
And you've got Jalen Graham.
Yeah.
So that would make 5, right?
But would you be here's the thing, he could still be, besides Trevin Brazil, the other stud in that group.
He would probably be the other stud.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting he would be 5 in the pecking order, but he's probably 5 in the mix. So do you want to go somewhere where you're sort of the guy? Or there's another guy that's big and then some other guys there? And then if you look at it, if you've got that many quality bigs, it means you play better and you have a better chance of winning a national championship. So I fed all that to Kevin. And what he told me was, it may boil down to NIL money.
It always boils down to NIL money, doesn't it?
And nobody knows how that will stack out, except that he did point out that when Ron Holland decided not to come here, that's NIL money you didn't have to use.
Correct.
And when the guy that's not coming back, come on.
So the guy's not coming, what are you talking about?
Walsh.
Walsh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so
Walsh, yeah.
when Walsh decided to stay in the draft and go ahead and go through the draft process, you don't have to, his NIL money goes away.
True.
So you got 2 guys that you could pool into one. The NIL money that you were going to use for 2 guys goes into one, and maybe you got enough to get it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it just depends. I mean, we were listening to Hunter Yurachek today, and he's like, that's the biggest thing right now is that NIL. Do you have enough to compete with everybody, and do you have enough to do that? And he kind of held his cards close to his chest a little bit. Like, I feel like people were trying to feel out if there was enough money to get Grant Nelson in the crowd. Yeah. And he was like, well, that's what it boils down to these days, NIL. So
NIL money. So anyway, Walsh not coming back may help.
Well, yeah, because you also have an open scholarship too.
That's right. That's the one spot that's left.
The one spot that's left. I mean, come on, Grant Nelson. That has his name on it right there. You know, maybe he watches Ask Mike, and we can lure him in a little bit. Arkansas has filled its final football scholarship spot by signing Clayton, North Carolina high school receiver Desmond James. Pedro Sanchez says 10:46, 100 meters. This is a huge get. Speed kills. Woo pig suey.
Yeah, there was a lot of people asking me questions. Well, because there was one story that said he was not ranked by recruiting service.
Oh.
Otis tells me that, and in one of them he was a high 3-star, just a tick below a 4-star. So what's the deal with this guy?
Yeah.
The deal is he didn't get more publicity because it looked like he was not going to be an academic qualifier. He had already signed with a JUCO and thought he was going to go JUCO route. Then at the last second he ends up eligible. And so he puts his name out there. Now, Arkansas gets really lucky here because they've got a spot left. A lot of schools don't have a spot left. So there were 3, one of them being South Carolina that had a spot left, and Arkansas was another one. I forget the name of the 3rd school, and he picked Arkansas.
Yeah.
Otis is real high on him, said that's legit speed. That is. He supposedly has been timed at a sub 4.4. So this guy's fast, and he's a wide receiver. Sounds like to me he could be a punt returner. You know, Arkansas hasn't had a really good speedy punt returner in a while.
Ooh.
So he's one of these guys that you want to see in August because you've not seen anything on him at all.
Yeah.
And so when we go out there the first day, everybody's going to be looking for him. I'm going to have a little camera.
Oh, you better spot him for us. I want to see him.
Where's he at? Where's he at? We're going to see how fast he is and all that stuff. So this is pretty exciting. Remember we got the question 2 or 3 weeks ago from the guy that was kind of saying that he hoped we didn't use up all of our scholarships because if we did, we could give some walk-ons some scholarships.
Yeah.
And I said I wasn't sure. They might have one or two left. They don't have one or two left.
No,
He was the last
that last one.
So
it's
Sam
done
Pittman
now.
filled them all.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's not a bad problem to have.
And I do
Filling them is
remember
good.
2 months ago when everyone was talking about all the openings. Oh, what's going on? They're like 12 under the scholarship limit.
They need to chill. Sam Pittman knows what he's doing. His staff knows what they're doing. And I'm excited. It also goes back to that's why you can't exactly go off spring ball as knowing what the team looks like because you have all these new additions coming in. So we're going to find out very, very soon. That's what we're thinking about next. But Lost in Swine wants to know, what exactly did Hunter Yurachek mean when he said some teams in the SEC weren't built for a 9-game SEC schedule? And was he intimating that Arkansas was one of those teams? Sorry.
I wasn't able to talk to him, and I wasn't at that function today.
Oh, yeah.
Probably if I was, I would have asked him. But so I don't know if he's going to officially say that as position. So what I will say to you is I talked to people over there that want to remain anonymous about this issue. Okay,
all right.
People in the athletic department that want to remain anonymous.
Okay, we got some anonymous sources here.
One of them told me flat out, absolutely, this is our position. And here's why. We're still trying to build our program up. Now look what's fixing to happen. We're fixing to allow 2 traditional football powers into a league that's already tough as it can be. We know how tough it is. Every week, you know, there's somebody that can beat you. It doesn't matter who it is. And now you're going to throw Texas and Oklahoma in there?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we're not only just going to do that. Let's have a 9-game conference schedule. So you're going to take away your a mid-major game and make you play another SEC team. And what he said was this. This is what a lot of teams are going to find out. And this is why even Nick Saban was against it.
Yeah.
Because that creates the potential for more losses. What do more losses do in football? It takes you out of getting selected in the national championship field.
Yeah.
Now we're about to expand to 12, which is good. But if you start putting more losses on SEC teams, and that would include Arkansas, you may knock a team here and knock a team there out of being selected.
Yeah.
All because they didn't play that mid-major game earlier in the year, and instead they played one of their own conference foes and got beat.
That makes sense.
So why is this happening? And he acknowledged to me, the person I'm talking to, acknowledged to me that it's going to go 9 games in 2025.
Yeah.
24, it's going to be the
same schedule,
the schedule hasn't been released,
No.
but it's an 8-game schedule. That's probably the last year it's going to be that way. They will go over to a 9-game in 2025. Now, why? If we've just made all the arguments for not doing it, why? Money. The networks will give you more money if you do this. This is one of the things they're saying to us. If you want more money from us, you have to give us better games because ESPN does not want Arkansas versus Missouri State. They want Arkansas, let's say the extra game would be Florida that year.
Yeah.
We want Arkansas playing Florida instead of playing Missouri State. Now, if you don't have a brain in your head, then you probably don't see the difference between those two scenarios. But let's say there's a schedule some year. It doesn't have to be this year, next year, whatever. But a schedule where you could have played Missouri State, but you're going to play Florida because you agreed to play 9-game schedules. All of you did that. See the difference there?
Yeah, no, I see
and
exactly.
I will
what
tell
you're
you
saying.
that if you win that game against Missouri State and you get to the end of the season and you've got 10 wins, maybe that gets you into the playoffs or maybe it gets you a good bowl game. But if you lost it and you're back down to 9 games, what's going to happen? You're going to drop.
Yeah.
So this is the argument that they're making. But it was interesting to me that Greg Sankey said, money's not everything. We have to take that. Well, what he was saying is, yeah, for this year.
Yeah.
But next year, money is about everything. Not this year, but 2024.
2024, yeah.
2025 is about money again.
Yeah.
And so, again, here's what will have happened in 2025. The SEC will have added 2 extra teams, top quality football programs, and created a tougher schedule because you got to play 9 conference games instead of 8. And you've eliminated divisions, and you're going to play. You're going to go. We're in a situation where you might not play a Florida once every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Now you're guaranteed to play them at least every other year, I think.
Yeah,
or
that would
every 3rd year for sure.
Yeah, that would be if they're doing it that way with the 9 games. Yeah.
So you're making it infinitely more difficult, and you're doing this so you can get a little bit more money. Because the Big Ten announced, hey, we've got the biggest payout ever now because they announced their big deal.
Yeah.
Now the SEC's in there going, oh, we can't allow that to happen.
No.
So we got to go along with these yo-yos and do whatever, you know.
Well, it's all about money, Mike. I mean, it's all about money.
I've got yo-yo on my mind.
You've got yo-yo in your mind. Who said yo-yo in their question today? That it's also got yo-yo in my mind, too.
Mousetown.
Mousetown, that's right. Mousetown said it. It's interesting, Mike, because I'm even interested to see, let alone how the 9 games works, I'm interested to see how that 2024 schedule is going to look. Because
it'll be tougher.
It'll be tougher because you've eliminated divisions, and then also you only have your one permanent opponent, right? Which Hunter Yurachek said, all I know.
He said, all I know is it's Missouri. So that answers that question we had last week.
Yep, it answers that.
We're going to continue to play Missouri as a rivalry every year.
That is what they're going to do, Mike.
The SEC said that's your rival and you're going to like it.
I don't like it. I wanted to audibly say, oh, really? We have to Missouri? But I mean, I'm interested to see who they're going to place as the other opponents. Is what I'm interested in. What are the other 7 games are going to be if we know Missouri's one of them?
Yeah.
It's just going to be interesting. I'm interested to see, and that comes out June 14th.
It's coming up soon.
June 14th, I think. So it is coming up very soon, and we'll find out with Hunter Yurachek because he said he doesn't know.
He says he doesn't know.
He says he doesn't know, but he could actually know. But we'll see what's going on there. Hot Dogger asks, who out of all the new players on the Razorback football team this year do you expect or look forward to becoming a standout as starters?
I would say Isaiah Sategna, probably because he played at Fayetteville, which is about 2 blocks from where we are, 2.5, 3 blocks. Because we heard all about him his senior year in high school. Then he redshirted, so we don't see much. And then we see him in the spring game, and what do we see? We saw that one touchdown pass from KJ Jefferson, and he showed his speed. Because that secondary is better this year. Mm-hmm. It's much better. And the secondary was dominating the ones until that play. Mm-hmm. And he got past them, and KJ put it right in his hands. I liked seeing that. So I'm saying that's the guy I'm looking forward. I'll be out there, and I'll be shooting the new wide receiver.
James, Desmond James,
I'm going to get a shot of him, and then I'm going to get a shot of Isaiah Sategna that first day.
Oh, I'm excited to see how it translates to that first game or those first couple of games because we've only seen him really in the spring game. And I feel like he's kind of holding back a little bit. I feel like there's more to see with him, and that's going to be really excited. I'm excited for him as well. Marty Bird's Proxy wants to know, do you believe we'll see either, well, here's maybe a question about this. Do you believe we'll see either OU or Texas become elite at the level of Bama and Georgia when they come into the league? I don't think they will be ready for the weekly pounding, not initially anyway.
I would say that OU has a better chance of moving up in the upper division of the. Remember, it's going to be one 16-team conference.
Yeah, no
So if you're
East or
talking
West.
about in the top 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, I'd say OU's got a better shot than Texas. But we're both are going to be in for a shock because I've been through this when Arkansas went from the old Southwest Conference into this conference. Mm-hmm. When you come into the SEC, this is what you're not ready for. Every team has a crazy fan base. Almost all of them fill their stadiums up for football. The talent level you're facing is insane. Anybody can beat you. You can be upset. There's no guaranteed wins. You can be upset on any given night. And then here's what OU and Texas their fans are going to run into. Those 2 schools are on the extreme western end of what is now going to be a huge conference. They're going to, at times, travel all the way over to Gainesville from Austin. Yeah. Imagine traveling all the way from Norman over to Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah.
You're going to have to fly.
Yes,
I don't see you driving that unless you're retired and you make it a 2-day trip and a 2-day trip back. So it's much more difficult to travel as a fan. And when you get there, you're going to get harassed. Wait till they travel to LSU for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
OU fans go to LSU for the first time, and some
be
OU fan decides to use a porta potty outside the stadium. He gets it turned over on him.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they'll learn. This league is different.
It is. The SEC, it just means more, right?
It does. And it can be just a lot scarier.
It can be a lot scary. There's Mike Irwin's warning to Texas and OU fans. It's going to be a lot scarier for you guys when you join the SEC. That's going to be I'm excited to see what will happen. I really am. And to see them, start to come into the mentions on Twitter and things like that, to start getting involved in the conversation a little bit more. So that I am excited for as well. And our final question of the show today is from Dr. Strangepork, who asked the Razorback Foundation, when was it started? What's its main function? Was it intended to be a slush fund? Which past president of it has been the most successful? Wow, interesting.
Sounds like a boring question probably to most fans. I found it interesting.
I find that very
glad
interesting.
It was asked because there is an interesting history behind the foundation.
Okay.
It was started by Frank Broyles right after he became athletic director. One of the things Frank, and I talked about this with him more than once, when he became AD, he was aware of the fact that football coaches who became ADs at their school were often criticized for only promoting football. And he wanted to make sure he wasn't one of those guys. And so his goal when he became athletic director was to expand other programs. He wanted a better basketball program, and we see where we are right now in basketball. Well, he started that when he went out and hired Eddie Sutton, then got the money to expand Barnhill Fieldhouse into Barnhill Arena. He went over and built the first indoor tennis center, which was also featured an indoor track. So he's doing stuff for two sports at once. He needed to hire better coaches. He had to pay more money. He had to get money for facilities. So where's he going to get all this money from? And they came up with this idea, and I think they were the first school in the country to do this, where you tie buying season tickets with making a donation. In other words, I can't just buy season tickets for the cost of the season ticket.
No.
I have to pay a donation. But he wanted to run it by a lot of the donors. So he went to Little Rock in the summer of 1973, and he had a meeting with a bunch of these influential donors. And he said, do you think this will work? And he explained why they needed it, what it would do. And I have to tell you, I can't even begin to think what would have happened if that had never happened. Because when you understand what the foundation does today, and you realize there was a time when there wasn't a foundation, you couldn't exist today. You couldn't exist on a level that you're on right now if you didn't have that foundation. So they said yes, they would support it. So what did they start using the money for? Well, no, it wasn't a slush fund. It wasn't money used to buy players, and I could go on and on about that because I've known too many top quality Razorbacks that were dead broke on this campus. Yeah. Quarterbacks who didn't own a car. You go to some schools, and I've had people tell me, our quarterback, and this was all the way back in the 70s, our quarterback drives a brand new car. Arkansas's quarterback, Ron Calcagney, in the late 70s didn't have a car. Wow. Okay?
Wow.
And I could just go on and on. So they weren't using this money for players. They were using it to develop facilities, build new facilities. Think about this. You can only pay a coach a certain amount of money. There's a top level that you can pay any state of Texas employee, and these coaches are state of Texas.
State of Texas. I was like, state of Arkansas?
That popped out of my head. State of Arkansas employees, you can only pay them so much.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are. So to go beyond that, you have to have the foundation, which will pay the extra amount.
That makes sense.
The foundation, whenever a new coach is hired, their contract is done through the foundation because the foundation is the one that decides how they're going to pay them. And in that contract there are rewards for, let's say you win a conference title, like Musselman, you win it, or you go to Elite Eight, or you go to whatever.
Yeah.
You get extra money for that. That comes from the foundation. So they're the ones that come up with the money to do all that stuff. If a coach gets fired, who pays him off? The foundation does. Now, the original foundation, after they organized it and agreed to do this, was Wilson Matthews, who was a Razorback assistant coach at the time. He stepped down from coaching and agreed to run the foundation out of the Broyles Center. I remember when he had an office just not far from the SID office. He did that for 2 or 3 years, and then he retired. At that point, they decided, we're taking this off campus. Why did they do that? Because if you're on campus and you're in a campus facility, it's a state-supported thing, and people like me, media people, can go in there and FOI and get all your money information.
Oh.
It's not that they were trying to cover anything up, but they don't want people to know what they're doing with their money until they announce it.
Yeah.
How much money did you raise here? What did you do here? So in order to sort of get that out of the public eye, they took it off campus, got a building that was off campus, put their people in there, and then that was sort of the creation of the modern Razorback Foundation. Terry Don Phillips was the first one of those. He was a former Razorback player. He later became the AD at Clemson. He was an assistant AD at one time, I think, at Arkansas. He was the first one off campus. Then I think it was Chuck Dicus, who was a former Razorback player. Then it was Harold Horton, who was a former Razorback player. So he had this succession of Razorback, and they all played football.
Oh, wow.
So the foundation is all football players. And the idea was this: when you're out there mixing with people and trying to get these Razorback fans to give money, they love football players.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good idea.
it'll work that way. The one that's just left, Scott Verde, was the first one, I believe, that wasn't a former Razorback football player. And I was asking some people about him, and they said, you know what? He was an attorney, originally an attorney for the athletic department. He turned out to maybe be the best of these.
Really?
Because he just was a people person, and he knew how to get money out of these people.
There you
and
go.
He did a great job. So I don't think anyone would agree on who the best was, because they were all good. There's not a bad one. But he might have been the best. I don't know. That's sort of the feedback I got. But that's the history of the foundation.
That is so interesting. I had no idea that was how that all got created.
And
so
imagine if you
very
don't have the
interesting.
ability to do that. And they were the first.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Now almost all schools have that.
Yeah.
Have that donation tied into buying season tickets and other ways of raising money. If you didn't have that, you couldn't hire coaches. You couldn't pay them what you need. You couldn't do buyouts. You couldn't improve facilities. You couldn't do any of this stuff.
Wow, that is so unique. I love that. I thought that was a really interesting question. So thanks, Dr. Strangeport, for asking it. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.